Alright, so welcome back. This is the latest Spiral Abyss guide for version 4.4. We will begin with the Blessings of the Abyss. This Blessing of the Moon is the Ascendant Moon. With it, a character receives healing, it will be counted. When the count reaches a total of 16, a shockwave will be released at the character's position, dealing true damage to nearby opponents and clearing the count. One such shockwave can be triggered every 8 seconds. So for our Blessing of the Abyss, we have an animal damage bonus. Now, for the first chamber of this lore, it's literally a monolith challenge. For the enemies, we have 4 Blazing Axe Minotaurs, 4 Hilichurl Fighters, and 4 Berserker Hilichurls. The second half has 7 Pyro Slimes, 5 Hydro Slimes, and 4 Cryo Slimes, and 2 Electro Slimes spawning in waves. Now for Chamber 2, we have 2 enemy waves. The first begins with 2 Geo Vishaps, followed by the 2 Primordial Vishaps. The second half here has the 2 Abyss Mages, the Pyro Mage, and the Cryo Mage, each respectively spawning with their counter element slimes. For the Pyro Mage, we have 3 Hydro Slimes. The Cryo Mage gets 3 Pyro Slimes. Chamber 3 for the first half, a little bit easier, having only 2 Ruin Drakes. Then the second half has 3 of each enemy, those being Mirror Maidens, Pyro Treasure Hoarders, Electro Treasure Hoarders, Hydro Treasure Hoarders, and Cryo Treasure Hoarders. Try saying that 3 times fast. For the first half of this lore, it is mainly large enemies, and considering the Bishop has a Hydro resistance, it is recommended to run a Melt or Taser team, literally any team that can deal AoE damage, since enemies in this half cannot be so easily grouped. For the second team, it is recommended to run Vaporize or an Animal Hypercarry. Whatever team you do decide to run, you should bring an animal unit that can swirl, since swirling will be quite useful because of how many elemental shields the enemies have. So we've made the floor 11. For the first half, all you need to do is stray away from the monolith and deal with the waves of enemies as they move forward, deal out some AoE attacks for this round, clear enemies efficiently, or take advantage of the animal damage bonus. The next half of Chamber 1, enemies spawn surrounding the monolith, and so having an animal unit for swirling and crowd control can go a long way. Thankfully, all these enemies are just small slimes, so there shouldn't be no issue, and without a time limit, you can keep up your ultimate, so don't worry, you'll be in safe hands.
Too late for regret. No, my sword.
The second half here has enemies surrounding the monolith, and so having the animal unit for swirling and crowd control can go a long way. Thankfully, all these enemies are just small slimes, so there shouldn't be an issue at all for you. So for the first half of Chamber 2, you'll want to do as much damage as possible, especially since the Bishops can move a lot and delay your clearing times. One way to control their movement, though, is by going to the edge as they spawn, because they'll be drawn towards you, making it a lot easier on your clearing times. These slimes have the element that counters shields of the Abyss Mage that they spawn with, so if you have an animal unit, swirl away.
Things are about to get dicey. Busted.
Chamber 3 has 2 Ruin Drakes to begin with, spawning at opposite sides of the arena. This is all a damage test, and not to worry, the Ruin Drakes are naturally drawn to the player, so a second Drake will be coming towards you. Focus are also great if you can hit the weak spots accurately to paralyze the enemy, but not really required. The final chamber and half has a generous wave of Mirror Maidens along with Treasure Hoarders. For the unprepared player, they'll be stuttering you and freezing you, which I definitely got frozen quite a bit here in this gameplay. It is significantly easier to go after the Mirror Maiden first, since they teleport so frequently and have the largest HP of all the enemies. The Treasure Hoarders, to the player's delight, follows the player, so just watch for projectiles that cause elemental reactions and you should be fine. The second half of these chambers has to begin with the Ruined Serpent and its worm-like friend, the Weena, then for the finale, the Aeon Blade boss. Now let's talk team comps. For the first half of floor 12, if you happen to pull Cloud Retainer, feel free to run Cloud Retainer Plunge team with Gaming. You could also run Hyperloom Spread, Quicken, or a Vaporize team. All enemies in the first half of floor 12 are regular elite enemies that spawn in waves. You really want a strong team comp that can make up for the damage that is going to be eaten by the bosses in the second half. The second half, to easily hit the weaknesses of the bosses, you'll want to bring in a bow user. You may also run a Linny team with Mono Pyro, except for one animal character to swirl. A furina Nuevi duo will also do you great. This side of things, the teams can be incredibly flexible, and all that really matters is to put your strongest team. Alright, so for this side, you can choose to move towards the side so the mech can follow you, or you can just bulldoze your way through. There's no real strategy there.
Stabilize.
So for the second wave though, the 2 big Breacher Primus creates a Dendro shield and will attack you relentlessly. You can use Hydro, Electro attacks to remove their shields and calm it down and weaken it.
Bow your head. Gather. ahead.
So you've made it to the second half of Chamber 1. It's everyone's favorite boss that completely got overshadowed by Yelan's stunning entrance. I mean, come on. Do you see that cutscene? Today you will encompass your inner Yelan and beat the crap out of this boss. This boss has only two big windows to reliably use your burst during the sweeping attack and the big spinning attack. Feel free to reset with these bosses since a lot of their attacks and openings are RNG based.
Make way for the.
For all other attacks, the boss behaves erratically, then burrows shortly after, so it's not great to use big cooldown bursts. Prioritize using quick refresh abilities. Unlike the overworld version of this boss, the only way to stop its spinning attack is to strike at its weak points, which is the flowing yellow below its head. Bow attacks can work, but you can also do this by standing at the center of its spinning attack and using big AoE bursts to completely drop it. If you manage to pull this off, a servant will stop spinning and will be paralyzed. This is the most optimal time to strike and put in that damage.
Busted.
Bow attacks can work, but you can also do this by standing at the center of its spinning attack and using big AoE bursts to completely drop it. If you manage to pull this off, a servant will stop spinning and will be paralyzed. This is the most optimal time to strike and put in that damage. Defeating the summoned mobs will chunk the summoner's health and briefly stun it, which you should do to speedrun this chamber. It's easier to do if you aim your attacks to be at both the Guild Hunter and Scorching War Master. This is all, in reality, just a DPS check.
At least you were here to watch.
For the second half of this chamber, I suggest you wait for its flying phase to do any meaningful damage. This phase will only begin after it's been burrowed around 4 times. Until then, the best strat in my opinion is to save your burst and use your skills to delete its health slowly until you get to its weak stage. The ideal route to account for the Weenut's movement is to have a character like Yelan who can dash. Or when the flying phase begins, target all the animal balls that the Weenut spawns with either Cryo, Pyro, Electro, or Hydro AoE or bow attacks, preferably done by your main DPS. When those animal balls do get destroyed, the Weenut will drop to the ground and reduce its res based on the element most used. And that is how we take the Weenut down very easily, very quickly. It'll be significantly more efficient for you. Good luck!
Gather.
Illusion shattered.
I see everything. Sharing my
So
knowledge.
for this section, I can only tell you to stay close to the gun-wielding mech, Pyro, as the shield-wielding mech, Electro, approaches to your location instead. This allows you to attack both enemies at once. This is a fairly normal mob fight in preparation for the second half of this chamber. So try to defeat both of them at the same time to save your own time. Now that we are in Chamber 3, the Aeon Blight delightfully greets us. When the fight begins, do not use any abilities and wait for the Aeon Blight Drake to fly up. This will expose its wings, and hitting those glowing yellow orb shapes are its weak points. When hit with a bow or ranged attack, the boss will be stunned and drop to the ground. Just note that when you use your rotation on the boss in its stunning stage, its res will be increased against the element you have used the most. This can be removed if you paralyze it again. Alright everyone, that's the end of our guide, and good luck in the Abyss.